Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with episode 109 of the Yakking Show. This is the show for awakening you to new perspectives for the changing world we find ourselves in, and it's certainly changing at the moment. A quick request, if you like our show, would you subscribe to the channel you're either watching or listening on? It helps us get our guests more exposure, and that's what we like to do. As always, we have a lineup of interesting guests from you, all sorts of things, and today is no exception, but it's not my job to introduce our guests. I first must welcome our co-host, Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter, and the sun is now shining, so I love it. So thank you for the intro. And thank you all so very much for tuning in to our show. We so appreciate you, and we love reading your comments, so please keep them coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we do have a special guest with us. Her name is Sharon Rosenblum. Sharon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. I'm great, thank you, and excited to be here to share what's happened to me in my journey in life. So
absolutely. Well, we're so excited to have you. You are the author of a book entitled Widowed with Kids. You are a bereavement, grief, and loss specialist. So Sharon, can you share with our audience a little bit about your background and how you came to dedicate your life to this whole topic of loss?
Yes. Well, I now feel my soul's purpose in life is to help people that are in that darkest, most painful place in life. As I unfortunately lost my husband 18 years ago when I was 39, and I had two young children at the time. My daughter was 7 and my son was 5. My son actually has complex special needs. He has autism, dyspraxia, ADHD, learning difficulties, speech impairments, and global delay. So even before losing my husband, life was very challenging with him alone. And unfortunately, my husband died. He was 41 and I was 39, which I think I just said. He had cancer of the pancreas, and he had it 14 years previous. So even before I knew him, he had it. And people that usually have cancer of the pancreas make 1 year, 2 years, 5 sort of maximum, but 10 is like hardly unheard of. And he went 14 years. I suppose he was lucky, I was lucky, because if it wasn't for that, we would never have met. And I stayed hidden. I suppressed my grief for so long. For 16, 17 years, and I hid it. I basically walked around with a mask in front of my face. So if I'd see people and they say, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. But I felt broken inside. And how I got to the other side, do you want to know that now, or do you want me to tell you about that after?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, so I think probably 4 years after I lost my husband, there was an advert in my local paper which was it was a charity looking for people to do bereavement therapy. And a good friend of mine was a counsellor, and she said to me, Sharon, why don't you apply for this? I said, I can't do that. She said, of course you can. Did it, and they gave like a very small training, and I saw my first client, and I got so much from that, and I thought, this is something I can do. And I did training. I've now got an advanced diploma in counselling, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and also I do life coaching as well. And I've forgotten where I was going with this now. And yeah, so then I started doing a lot of personal development. What was the question? Sorry, Kathleen, just ask me again.
That's okay.
Where was I going with this? I do go off on a tangent sometimes.
That's all right. No, you were telling us how you came to terms with it after 17 years. You know, you hid it for a long time, and you were telling us how you broke through.
Thank you. So I'd done a lot of personal development. I was seeing somebody, and I wasn't in a good place. And I was just scrolling through Facebook one day, and this thing came up, a lady called Anna Garcia, who is a relationship intensive coach. And I went on that, and I started my personal development has grown since being on that. And when I started with her, I was Miss Fearful. I lived my life in fear. I was scared of my own shadow. I wouldn't do anything on my own. And I decided I wanted to be Miss Fearless. and there were 6 of us that were going to, I don't like heights, and I don't know if you guys in Canada watch See I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here from the jungle. But anyway, they go to Australia. It's a long story short, but they do a skydive into the jungle, and that used to make me feel physically sick. And I don't like heights, but I thought I'm going to do a skydive to stop being stop being afraid and be Miss Fearless. Long story short, I couldn't. When I was 26, I had a brain tumor, and when you've had any brain surgery, I couldn't do it, and I was gutted, absolutely gutted. And I wanted to get that excited feeling back. And I was scrolling through Facebook one day, and my friend actually, how I got onto your show, Amanda, who you interviewed a few weeks ago.
Yes, yeah.
She'd written a book, and she said, does anyone want to be put in touch with my publisher? I don't know why I clicked on the link, and I said, go on, Amanda, put me in touch with her. And when I was at school, I got 2 U's and an E in English. So I've always said, I can't write a book. When I've told people my story before, they've often said to me, you should write a book. And I said, I can't write a book. Well, I have written a book, as you can see, and I've written it purely from my heart and to help those that are in that darkest place.
Wow, very good. Wow, what a story. That is amazing. Sharon,
yeah, and there's lots more, but
yeah, I want to ask you something which I think might help people who suddenly find themselves in the position you're in. And when we were talking earlier, I mentioned to you that my own mother was widowed at 56 very, very suddenly. And I know what she told me, and she'd been seriously injured and told she'd never walk again at just a couple of months before. So, but in your case, when you had an inkling that your husband was going to die because he'd been sick for a while, but it must still have been a huge shock when that day came. What goes through your mind, and what could other people facing similar circumstances expect to be the first things that go through their mind when it actually happens, when you suddenly wake up and say, wow, I'm now a widow?
Yeah. I've often thought during the last year going through COVID, how on earth would I have coped now in COVID, losing a loved one, because you're totally on your own. I was very fortunate. I say fortunate, but I always had a lot of family and friends supporting me and was always here with me. But now I don't know how I would have coped if I was so alone. The first stage people tend to go through is just total shock. And for me personally, I just didn't want to be here anymore. And my husband was a diabetic because he had his pancreas removed. I had a fridge full of insulin and syringes. I actually wanted to give myself a dose. I just didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And thank God I had children. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation now.
Right.
So shock is just the hardest, well, grief is the hardest thing anyone ever goes through.
Just, I would imagine children help in that you have now a real purpose to live for, correct?
Yes, if I didn't have the children, I wouldn't be here now, I'm sure.
Right.
I only got out of bed in the mornings to take them to school.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, Sharon, when someone is faced with sudden loss and heart-wrenching grief, can you tell our audience what the first step was, perhaps in your case, in helping them? How do they cope with this? What's the first step they must do? Or is there a step in helping them cope?
There's no step. Everybody is unique and everybody grieves in a different way. So there's no set way that you go. It's not like a linear line. It's really like a very dark spiral. And as I said, I got trapped in that spiral. For me, I personally now would not say to people, because I have told friends in the past, if they've had any anxieties, antidepressants are a good help. And I was put on antidepressants 6 months before my husband died. He was a pharmacist and I was crying all the time and it was bringing him down. He said to me, go to the doctor and get put on antidepressants, which I did do. And I used to put in for a repeat prescription every 3 months, and they never ever saw me. I just got the prescription. 8 years later, I was still on the tablets. Now I used them as a crutch to help me with my son, but I didn't need to be on them that long. That was just crazy. And I don't want to frighten anybody that's watching this, but the only place I ever felt anything was my ankle. And 9 years ago now, I got diagnosed with a malignant melanoma on my ankle.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think I suppressed so much, and because I didn't feel it internally, because the antidepressants really just sort of numb you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm convinced that's why I had the skin cancer. Thank God it was on my ankle, not the back of my leg or my back, because again, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys now if it was something like
Wow.
that.
So in that case, Sharon, if there is no prescribed steps in helping someone cope, is it maybe the best way to help them journey through it is just to have them talk about it? Because oftentimes I hear that, when someone passes or dies, let's just say dies, nobody talks about it. Because they don't want to upset the person, so they don't even mention their name. And oftentimes, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my personal experience, you want to talk about them. Mm-hmm. It keeps their memory alive. But what are your thoughts on that?
It's one thing that I've actually written in my book. It's so important to always say their name. Mm-hmm. And my husband's name was Simon, and I'm always, when I talk to people, I would always say, Simon did this, Simon did that, Simon, etc. So it's very important to say their name, and also to talk about them all the time. And also, I wouldn't say you don't go to the doctor and things, but I would actually recommend now to see a homeopath rather than a GP. Like the GP, if you say you can't sleep, they give you sleeping tablets. Mm-hmm. Or, whereas a homeopath deals with you as a whole person.
Yes.
And your appointments are for like an hour to an hour and a half. And they help treat you holistically rather than with conventional medicines. But it is so, so important to talk. I think talking therapy is the best therapy. When I took my daughter to school, people used to cross the road rather than speak to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh my.
Or I was shopping in the supermarket. People saw me coming, they'd go up another aisle. And that hurt. Because all I wanted was someone just to, all right, I know you can't do it now because of COVID, but just wanted someone to give me a hug.
Sure.
Or say, I'm here for you if you want me. Or take the kids out for a bit, or cook dinner.
Isn't that another statement of how people are around others who are going through grief, because they just don't know what to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's their discomfort, not yours, that's the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I even had people say to me, like, I know how you feel. I lost my mum last year, or my dad, or I lost my dog, or someone even said to me, well, you're lucky, at least your mortgage has been paid off.
That's a bit harsh.
They call that luck. Yes, I know.
Oh my.
Wow.
So,
oh dear. Kathleen, you wanted to ask something. Ask Sharon something.
No, it's your turn, Peter. Go ahead.
Sorry, I've thrown you.
And well, I think you covered it, but your suggestion was aggravated because you had a son that had a whole lot of special needs as well. So you had to deal with that too on your own now suddenly. Wow.
And I still have. I mean, especially now in COVID, 24/7. He's here with me, and it's COVID is harder than. Well,
of course.
Story, but.
Wow. So I wanted to ask you, you talk on your website about finding the light at the end of the tunnel. You've sort of touched on that already a little bit, but what switched the bulb on in that light at the end of the tunnel, if you like, use that analogy?
I suppose for me, the biggest thing has been a lot of people, when they're going through grief, they turn to certain addictions. It could be drinking, could be alcohol, which is drinking, alcohol, caffeine, smoking, sugar. Mine was sugar and shopping, and I fed every emotion with food and sugar. I actually put on just over 5 stone after losing my husband.
So 5 stone in our terms is 70 pounds, right? So it's about 30 kilos, 26, 28 kilos, something like that. Wow, that's,
Yeah, because but then I then probably lost about 4 stone. So I don't know what it is in kilos, and over the gradually I have put some more on, but every emotion I ever felt, I fed. I didn't want to cook for the kids. I'd just stick something in the microwave. And again, I did the same thing with shopping. I used to shop as well, and I didn't buy I'm not talking about food and essentials. I'm clothes, handbags, shoes, and I didn't buy one. I'd buy every color, and it was just crazy. And that was because I got releases the dopamine in your brain to make you feel better.
Sure.
I gave up my sugar. It's a year next month. And oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I feel like a completely new person. That has been the biggest thing for me, giving up my sugar addiction and also my shopping.
Congratulations.
Yeah. In a peace, in a joy, and in a happiness I now feel for giving up the shopping addiction, sugar addiction.
Oh,
Very
goodness.
good. Well, you're preaching to the converted with us too, because we've given up all sorts of, I mean, Kathleen's been eating healthily for longer than I have, but I had my own health scare and gave up dairy and sugar. I've never been a great drinker.
Sugar too.
Yeah. I occasionally have a little bit in coffee, but otherwise tea. I used to have 2 or 3 spoons every cup of tea. And being British born, you'll know that I drink a lot of tea. So giving all that up. Kathleen, your turn.
Sure. So tell our audience a little bit more about your book and what they can expect in your book.
My book,
which is, by the way, right behind you. Right.
Yes, I can't hold it up because it will get lost in the screen, but it's called Widowed with Kids, and it's available on Amazon. And basically it tells my story in the beginning, how I lost my husband, and then I talk about the stages of grief. There are many, well, a lot of psychiatrists have said there's 5 or 7. I personally think there was 12, but I talk about in the beginning the main stages of grief and how different ways that people go through them, how you deal with children, or how I dealt with children, and how I would advise to deal with children, facing challenges alone, survival tips, and also, as I've got hung on my website, I'm doing an interview with a homeopath and also a wonderful lady called June who does a vision board, but it's not a vision board how I would have imagined a vision board. It's just absolutely incredible. She gets you to do things on your vision board, and they do manifest and come true. Excellent. So again, that's all spoken about in the book, and yeah, it's just to help people through this journey.
Excellent. Sharon, now that you talked about your children, I'm just curious, at the time that you lost your husband and it sent your life in a tailspin, shall we say, how did this impact your children, and how, because children are very perceptive, they know, when mom or dad are not feeling right, or they just know if something is wrong. How did they cope?
I'll talk about how Oliver coped, my son Oliver first. Well, my husband was in a hospice, and then he did come home for a little while. 3 times we had to have him call an ambulance to have him taken to hospital. So my son saw 3 times him taken away by ambulance, and he was at the time probably 4.5. So that must have been horrific for him to see. And because of his special needs, his psychotherapist said to me, he probably won't grieve for 3 years. Now his speech is very limited, and he always used to say, "When's Daddy ding dong?" That would mean like, "When's Daddy coming home?" And every day for 3 years, he said to me, "When's Daddy coming ding dong?" Which was really, really difficult, because my mother-in-law said to me as well, she unfortunately lost her husband when she was 49. She's now 88. But she said to me, "Don't ever cry in front of the children." Well, I personally don't agree with that. I think it's better if you show your emotions in front of the children, which we did do. And then it was about 3 years' time, Oliver, I then got him an appointment with a play therapist, because he was beginning to understand a little bit that Daddy had died, but he didn't really know what that word meant. And my mother-in-law actually had told him that Daddy was in heaven. And we did go away. It was a couple of years afterwards. And of course, we were going through the plane, going through the clouds, and Oliver's looking out the window. And I remember saying to him, "What are you looking at?" He said he's looking for Daddy.
Oh.
when you tell, because especially with autism, they black and white, you know, very whatever you
little.
say, that it's
Mhm.
yeah. So it was very, very challenging with him. But play therapy is incredible for children. And literally we had to go through everything again, and they were like playing with toys and dolls and put them in a little matchbox and then bury them in the sandpit. I then had to take him to the to the cemetery to show him where his daddy was.
Mhm.
So it was challenging with him. With my daughter, I'm Jewish, and in the Jewish religion, women don't go to a funeral if their parents are still alive. Well, both my parents were still alive, so officially I shouldn't have even gone to his funeral. Girls also aren't meant to go to a funeral when they're under the age of 13, and my daughter was 7, so officially she shouldn't have gone either. Obviously we both went. I gave her the option. I said, do you want to go or do you want to go to a friend? And she chose to go. But the older generation were like looking at me, well, why is Sophie here? And she's too young.
Mhm.
But I did lose my faith as well afterwards. But
Right.
yeah, very, very challenging. But she did have therapy
Mm. And how old is she
afterwards.
today, Sharon? How old is she today?
She's now 26.
And do you ever discuss the grieving process with her today and what her experience was at that time?
Yeah, she still finds it very difficult. I mean, everybody gets upset on certain days. There's always certain dates or songs and different things, but she still does struggle with it. And I do feel she probably needs some more therapy. But we do talk about it. I've always have done, and loads of photos and videos, and yeah. And Oliver, my son, also likes to talk about it, but I would always talk about it with them. And I cry in front of them too if I need to.
I'm going to jump in with something that I hadn't thought of until you mentioned it. You mentioned you lost your faith a little bit. I don't care which of the major faiths one belongs to. Would you say that the decline in religious observance, doesn't matter whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever, over the last 50 years, certainly in my lifetime, probably you've seen it in your lifetime, has that decline made it easier or worse for people to deal with grief?
Again, some people they find it easier, and other people lose their faith. I mean, for me personally, before my husband died, because we weren't religious and we'd never met the rabbi actually from our synagogue, and he just wanted to meet him before he died. He knew it didn't have long. And I remember phoning the synagogue, leaving a message on their answering machine saying that my husband was terminally ill. Please, can you call us back? So he'd like to just see you. I think my husband died, it was a week later, but he returned my call 3 weeks later. I kind of thought,
yeah.
I
I've
won't tell
heard
you what
from
I thought, but
I've heard from some people that over and above the spiritual side of religious faith, the community side had been a great help in their grieving process. So, which one can get outside of religion, of course, as well, in a tight-knit community. But the tight-knit communities have also been a casualty of the way things have gone over the last 50 years or so. So, yeah, interesting. What about right now? You mentioned people struggling with the virus because of the coronavirus problems and the lockdowns and all that. Any special advice for people in positions where they're losing someone right now?
there are many groups actually on I mean, I only use Facebook. I don't use the other social medias, but there's lots of groups that are on social media. It'd be worth joining one of the groups, because it's just somebody to let your story out to, or to find somebody that you can actually speak to. So see a therapist, because like I said to Kathleen, talking therapy is the best therapy. Because, well, I learned the hard way by suppressing my emotions.
For sure. Can you tell us about the courses you offer?
I do. I've got some video courses which will be on my website, which is almost finished. Hopefully in a week's time it will be finished, so please wait just a week before you sign up for it. And it's only £49, so it's, I don't know what that is in dollars, but it's £49 in English money. And there's 6 weeks program offering just showing different things that you can do, like through the grieving process, dealing with children, homeopathy, vision board. And I also offer one-to-one support as well, which I could actually, and that's funny because I only used to like seeing clients face to face, but now I could see people the other side of the world virtually, like we're doing now.
Excellent.
So in one way, this virtual world is good for certain things, and certainly with doing therapy, it's quite amazing. So.
Well, Peter, we're almost out of time.
That's right. We need to just ask Sharon about her website. You mentioned it. What's the actual link? www.
Yeah, widowedwithkids.co.uk.
.co.uk. No, that's great. We'll put that on the video.
And do people reach you through?
And there's also Facebook.
Oh yeah, Facebook.
Sorry, say that. Facebook, it's, hang on. Can I just check what it's called?
Sure.
Sure.
1 minute. It's, oh, hang on. Sorry. I shouldn't have said the Facebook, should I?
I can get it. Don't worry. I can go.
Widowed with Kids Support Community.
Support Community. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's that a Facebook page.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Group probably. Okay, we'll look that up and we'll put that link on the video as well. Sorry, Kathleen, I interrupted you.
That's all right. And it looks like people can also reach you through email at Sharon at
yes.
Widowed with
Sharon
Kids.
at Widowed with Kids.
Kids.
Okay.
Widowedwithkids.co.uk, the same. Yes.
.co.uk. Okay, we'll put all that, certainly. Well, thanks very much for me, Sharon. That was good.
You.
And I think that will be very helpful to a lot of our audience who are faced with situations similar to yours. And certainly thank you for the good work you're doing. Back to Kathleen.
Absolutely.
You're
Thank
very
you
welcome
for everything that you're doing, Sharon. It's so needed right now. Oh, it's always been needed.
Mm-hmm.
But we appreciate it.
Yes.
And thank you all so very much for tuning into our show again. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And by the way, we love reading your comments, so please keep them coming. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.